He didn't knock, didn't bow, didn't even look nervous. A 14-year-old kid in a hoodie strutted into Judge Caprio's courtroom, chewing gum, gaming headset around his neck, smirking like he owned the place. When the clerk read the charges, he yawned. When the officer testified, he laughed. And when Judge Caprio asked if he understood what was happening, he said, My dad's a senator. This whole thing's a joke. But what he didn't know, Judge Caprio had already seen the footage, already heard the threats, already made a decision, and within minutes, this arrogant boy would be publicly humbled by his own father. A punishment so precise, so public, it left the entire courtroom in stunned silence. Before we show you what that sentence was, drop a comment telling us where in the world you're watching from, and hit subscribe, because this story starts with attitude, but ends with accountability. Now let's get into it. Monday mornings in Providence Municipal Court are usually predictable. People shuffle in half awake, clutching coffee cups, nervously adjusting jackets or smoothing out wrinkled shirts. Public defenders carry stacks of files pressed against their chests. Bailiffs lean against doorframes, scanning the room with practiced calm. Everything follows a familiar rhythm, but not today. Today, the room changes the moment the doors swing open. A pair of sneakers squeak across the polished floor, loud, deliberate, and slightly obnoxious. Heads turn, conversations break mid-sentence. Even the court reporter glances up from her keyboard. Ethan Rowe, 14 years old, hoodie half-zipped, slouched posture, wearing a smirk that doesn't belong in a courtroom. A gaming headset hangs around his neck like a necklace he's proud of. He chews gum with his mouth open, each pop of the gum louder than the last. He walks as if he's entering a school cafeteria, not standing before the chief municipal judge in Rhode Island. Behind him, keeping a careful but tense distance, are two staffers dressed in suits too formal for the age of the boy they're escorting. They walk like shadows, present yet powerless. Then behind them enters a man who almost never goes unnoticed in public life. Senator Daniel Rowe. Known across the state for fiery speeches and even hotter tempers, the senator is usually surrounded by cameras, journalists, and people eager to catch a piece of his attention. But here, in this courtroom, he walks without noise, without a microphone, without power. He sits in the second row, not beside his son, just behind him. His jaw is tight, his hands fold stiffly in his lap, and he avoids meeting anyone's eyes. The whispers start to spread. That's Senator Rowe. What did the kid do this time? Why is he acting like that in court? Even the bailiffs, men who have seen every kind of defendant imaginable, exchange looks. The staffers guide Ethan to the defendant's table. He drags his feet the last few steps, throws himself into the chair, slumps back, and swings his sneakered foot side to side under the desk like he's bored at a dentist appointment. He glances up at the judge's bench only once, long enough to see Judge Caprio adjusting his glasses, then looks away with a dismissive scoff. To Ethan, this isn't serious. To Ethan, this isn't real. To Ethan, none of this matters. He leans back, blows a bubble with his gum, and taps the side of his headset twice, checking if it's still connected to his phone. Judge Caprio watches him quietly, the way a grandfather might watch a child who doesn't realize he's on thin ice. There is no anger in the judge's face, just understanding, and something colder underneath it, a readiness. Caprio has seen arrogance. He has seen disrespect. He has seen entitlement from adults twice Ethan's age. But entitlement in a child, entitlement fed, watered, and protected, hits differently. It hits deeper. The courtroom has felt tension before, but today the tension has a name, a reputation, and a father with a Senate office. And as Ethan cracks his gum again, louder this time, Judge Caprio places his pen down gently because he knows this won't be a routine case. Clerk, City of Providence versus Ethan Rowe. The name echoes strangely in the courtroom. Somehow, it doesn't sound like it fits, not just because of the age of the defendant, but because of everything wrapped around that name, the weight behind it, the father behind it. Judge Caprio nods slightly. Let's hear the charges. The clerk straightens her sheet and begins reading. 1 count of disorderly conduct, 1 count of harassment of a city employee, 1 count of destruction of city property, and 1 count of operating a bicycle illegally in traffic. Ethan doesn't flinch. In fact, he yawns. a big, loud theatrical yawn that cuts through the clerk's voice mid-sentence. One arm stretches lazily into the air as though he's waking up from a nap instead of standing accused in a courtroom. Gasps flutter across the benches. Even the bailiff at the side wall shifts uneasily. Judge Caprio pauses, eyebrows raised just slightly. "Mr. Rowe," he says, tone even, "do you understand the charges brought against you?" Ethan shrugs, chewing louder on his gum. "I mean, sort of, but I didn't really do anything wrong." Caprio tilts his head. "You didn't?" "Nope." Ethan leans back further. People overreact all the time, especially adults. There's no fear in his voice, no confusion, just a shallow, passive defiance. The kind of confidence you can't teach, but you can definitely feed if no one corrects it. Senator Rowe, sitting 2 rows back, is staring firmly at the floor. His hands are clasped in front of him, white-knuckled. The man who's famously loud in front of a microphone looks today like someone hoping not to be recognized. Caprio taps his pen gently against the desk. "Let me see if I understand," he says slowly. "You're saying you don't believe any of these actions warrant concern?" Ethan answers too fast. "I was just biking. She got in my face." "She being the parking officer?" "Yeah, the one who acts like she runs the whole city." He laughs a little to himself, shaking his head. "All this over a stupid ticket printer. Come on." A few quiet murmurs ripple across the courtroom. One woman in the audience, a retired schoolteacher, waiting for her own parking ticket to be heard, shifts in her seat and glares. Caprio folds his hands. "And the city property you're accused of damaging, was that stupid as well?" "It was already old, probably broken before I even touched it." Ethan offers a smug little grin, as if he's just made a brilliant legal point. The smile doesn't reach Judge Caprio's face. He nods once, notes something in the file before him, then glances briefly toward the second row. Senator Rowe is still looking down. The courtroom feels smaller somehow, heavier, because when a 14-year-old stands before the court with no sense of consequence, and his father, a state lawmaker, remains silent behind him, the issue is no longer just about a broken ticket printer. It's about something deeper, something cultural, something dangerous. Caprio closes the folder in front of him and looks up. "I believe we'll need to hear from the city officer." A bailiff gestures toward the witness stand. From the back of the room, Officer Gloria Santos rises. Mid-50s, upright posture, silver-streaked bun, and the kind of tired eyes that have seen more disrespect in a week than most do in a year. She moves slowly, not from age, from caution. The room isn't hostile, but it is tense. She's testifying not just against a defendant, but against power, against privilege. Judge Caprio gives a respectful nod. "Officer Santos, thank you for being here. Please describe, in your own words, what happened that day." She clears her throat, steadying her voice. "It was Thursday morning, about 8:15. I was issuing citations downtown near Washington and Snow, double-parked vehicles blocking the bus lane." She glances briefly toward Ethan, who's now slumped with his head against his palm, pretending to look bored. "I saw a teenager, Mr. Rowe here, weaving through traffic on a bicycle, no helmet, earbuds in, blasting music from his phone, nearly clipped a pedestrian. So I stepped out and signaled for him to stop." Caprio. "And how did he respond?" Santos hesitates, then says it plainly. "He pulled off his headphones, laughed in my face, and said, and I quote, 'You're just a ticket lady. You don't tell me what to do.'" A few heads turn in the audience. Caprio leans forward slightly. "And what happened next?" "I asked for his name and told him I'd have to issue a citation. He stepped toward me, too close, and said, 'Do you even know who I am?' I told him I didn't. That's when he grabbed my handheld printer, just yanked it right out of my hand." Caprio raises his eyebrows. "He took it?" "Yes, Your Honor. Then he flung it into a puddle. It landed face down on the curb. And while I was picking it up, he said," she pauses, swallows, "he said, like, my dad can buy you. Go write someone else a ticket." A wave of murmurs runs through the courtroom. Even a few attorneys seated on the side exchange glances. Ethan sits up now, clearly annoyed. She's exaggerating. I barely touched her dumb machine. Caprio doesn't look at him. Mr. Rowe, you'll have your chance to respond. But Ethan keeps going. This is so stupid. She was being rude to me first. Making a scene. Santos doesn't flinch. I've worked this job for 21 years, Your Honor. I've been yelled at, cursed at, chased. I've never once felt the need to report an incident formally. Until this one. Caprio studies her, then looks back at Ethan. A beat of silence. The room has shifted. Not dramatically, not loudly, but undeniably. Because Officer Santos's words weren't embellished. They weren't angry. They were tired, disappointed. The kind of disappointment that doesn't raise its voice because it's already raised generations of better behaved children. And now, for the first time since entering the courtroom, even Ethan isn't smirking. Judge Caprio leans gently toward the clerk. Roll the footage, please. The courtroom lights dim just enough for the monitor to be clearly visible. A timestamp appears in the top corner. Thursday, 8:14 a.m., downtown Providence, Washington Street. The camera angle is wide. Fixed from a lamppost, angled slightly down. People come and go in the early rush, coats buttoned up, coffee cups in hand, a city in motion. Then, unmistakably, Ethan enters the frame. He's swerving fast through a narrow lane between a Metro bus and a double-parked sedan, earbuds dangling, hair whipping back, no helmet. His hoodie flaps behind him like a cape. A woman in business clothes steps out of a coffee shop. He misses her by inches. She gasps, stumbles back. Caprio doesn't say a word. Next frame, Officer Santos approaches calmly from the sidewalk, lifting one hand in a gentle stop motion. Ethan slows for half a second, then whips around her, laughing. He circles back, stops just in front of her, and mouths something. The courtroom watches closely. You don't hear the words, but you see the mocking grin. The size difference, the way Ethan lifts his chin, squaring up like he's toying with her. Then he reaches out, a fast, bratty swipe, grabs the handheld printer from her palm. He flings it carelessly. It arcs through the air, lands in the curbside gutter. Water splashes. Officer Santos bends down, steadying herself against a parking meter. And then comes the moment that freezes the whole courtroom. Ethan, clearly audible now thanks to the audio pickup, looks down at her and says, "Go get a real job. My dad runs this city." Someone in the back row exhales, sharp and uncomfortable. Ethan, now watching the footage from his seat, shifts. His jaw moves slightly. He scratches his cheek and avoids eye contact. For the first time, he looks a little uncertain. The footage ends with him riding off, headphones back in, dodging traffic again. Caprio doesn't speak immediately. He lets the silence settle. There is power in not rushing to fill a room like this. The air is heavier now, less performative, less cocky. He finally turns to Ethan. "You recognize yourself in that footage?" Ethan doesn't answer. Caprio presses again, softly. "Do you?" A pause. "Yeah. Good," Caprio says, folding his hands on the bench, because recognizing yourself is the first step toward recognizing the impact you have on others. The boy blinks slowly. He's not ready for what's coming, not fully, but the armor is starting to crack. Judge Caprio lets the moment breathe. The footage has left an imprint on the room, on the officer, and though Ethan won't admit it yet, on himself. Caprio leans forward, not angry, not loud, just deliberate. "Mr. Rowe," he says, "I want you to explain, in your own words, what led to what we all just witnessed. Start from the beginning." Ethan exhales like he's being asked to recite Shakespeare. He fidgets in his seat, leans back, shrugs dramatically. "She started yelling at me," he says. "She was like chasing me or something. I thought she was going to grab me. It was weird." Caprio tilts his head slightly. "So your instinct was to snatch her device and throw it?" Ethan smirks. "I didn't snatch it. She was waving it in my face like she was going to tase me or something. I just knocked it out. It was reflex." "Reflex," Caprio repeats. Ethan nods, eyes darting. "Yeah. And it's not even expensive. My dad will pay for it or whatever." The room tenses again. even a few quiet groans from the back. Caprio shifts his gaze toward the second row, where Senator Daniel Rowe sits, stone still, face unreadable, lips tight. He doesn't interrupt, he doesn't defend, but he's listening, and now he's leaning forward just slightly. The judge continues. "And the words you used?" Caprio asks calmly. "Go get a real job. My dad runs this city." "Were those also reflex?" Ethan scoffs. "I mean, I didn't mean it like that. She was acting dramatic. She could have just let me go. It wasn't even a big deal." Caprio lets out a small, almost inaudible breath, part disappointment, part restraint. "And your behavior in traffic, weaving between cars, nearly hitting pedestrians, no helmet. Was that Officer Santos being dramatic too?" "I was late." Ethan shrugs again. "I had practice. She wouldn't understand." "She," Caprio repeats slowly, "wouldn't understand?" Ethan folds his arms. "People like her. They always have a problem with someone like me. My bike's loud, my music's loud. They just assume I'm bad." The courtroom is now dead silent. Not one cough, not one shuffle. Caprio looks at the boy as if through a long tunnel of choices and consequences. Choices not entirely Ethan's own, but still his to face. "You seem to believe," Caprio says softly, "that your father's name, your age, and your frustration entitle you to exemption from decency." "I didn't say that, but you showed it." Ethan falls silent. Senator Rowe lowers his head. Caprio lifts a single finger. "This is not about your father," he says. "This is about you. And so far, Mr. Rowe, all I've seen is a young man who's never been asked to answer for his actions. But that is going to change. Today." Ethan's foot begins tapping rapidly. The tide has turned. Caprio folds his hands gently on the bench. The courtroom remains hushed, heavy with unspoken judgment, not the kind that comes from a gavel, but the kind that lingers in the air when someone's mask begins to slip. Ethan stares ahead, lips pursed, arms folded across his chest again. He swings one leg over the other and slouches even deeper, like he's trying to fold into invisibility or defiance. Caprio breaks the moment with a calm tone. "Before we continue," he says, glancing toward the clerk, "we are required to state for the record, this script is not verified and may or may not be true. It's just a formality, but for some reason it hangs in the air like a second gavel." Ethan scoffs, leans toward one of the staffers by his side and mutters, too loudly, "This judge is old. My dad'll fix this." The whisper isn't private, not even close. Half the courtroom hears it. Caprio definitely hears it. He pauses, blinks once, then looks directly at Ethan. "Mr. Rowe," he says, voice now quieter, steadier. "Please stand." Ethan lets out a long sigh, loudly. He doesn't move. "Now," Caprio repeats. There's no shout, no anger, just something in his tone, a depth that demands respect without needing to ask twice. Ethan slowly rises, exaggerating every movement like a protest. He tilts his head, bored and theatrical. "Why?" he says. "This is pointless. You're just going to give me community service or whatever." Caprio's silence is the loudest sound in the room. Even Senator Rowe sits upright, shoulders squared now, eyes locked on his son. For the first time today, the senator looks genuinely unnerved. "Pointless?" Caprio finally repeats. Ethan shrugs. "Yeah, I mean, come on. Everyone knows I'm not going to get locked up or something. Let's not waste the morning." He offers a smirk, half defense, half immaturity, and glances over his shoulder to his father, expecting a look of reassurance, a wink, a nod. But the senator just stares forward, palms clasped, face unreadable. Caprio leans forward ever so slightly. "This is your moment, Mr. Rowe," he says, "to decide whether you want to be seen as a young man with potential or as a child hiding behind his father's shadow." Ethan's smirk fades just a touch. You've been given every advantage, every privilege. But privilege, Caprio continues, without responsibility, is just entitlement in disguise. There's a tension in the room now, something deeper than offense. It's the quiet hum of a hard truth finally making its way through walls that have never been breached. Ethan doesn't speak. He looks away. Caprio exhales once. "Sit down," he says. Ethan lowers himself, slower this time. But everyone feels it. Something has shifted. And it's about to shift even more. Officer Santos adjusts her glasses and continues her testimony. Her voice trembles slightly, not from fear, but from the fatigue of being disrespected too many times by people who think uniforms make you less human. "I tried to reason with him," she says. "Told him it was dangerous the way he was weaving through traffic. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't threaten him. I just asked him to pull over and listen." She pauses, then looks directly at Caprio, "And he laughed right in my face." Ethan, still slouched in his seat, doesn't look up. His hand dips under the desk, and when it comes back up, he's holding his phone. The screen glows bright. A second later, the tinny sound of a mobile game soundtrack fills the quiet courtroom. Bleeps, blips, cartoonish explosions. The volume isn't low. Gasps ripple across the courtroom benches. Caprio doesn't speak at first. He simply watches the boy tilt his phone and tap the screen like he's alone in his bedroom, not standing trial for public misconduct. "Mr. Rowe," Caprio says, voice even, "turn off the phone." No response. "Mr. Rowe?" Ethan finally looks up, eyes glazed, annoyed. "What?" Caprio straightens slightly. "I said turn off the phone." Ethan sets the device down on the table, still active, still playing, and then, with a defiant smile, he leans back in his chair and mutters, "What are you gonna do? Arrest me? My dad's literally a senator." The room goes silent. Even the bailiff looks frozen in place. It's not just the words, it's the casual venom behind them. The way the boy says it like it's a spell, a cheat code, a trump card that he knows has worked before, in classrooms, in stores, with cops, with teachers, with anyone who tried to hold him accountable. Officer Santos drops her eyes, jaw tightening. Caprio doesn't move, doesn't blink. He simply closes the file in front of him. For the first time since Ethan walked in, the judge's expression shifts. Not to anger, not to outrage, to resolve. A quiet, unmistakable kind of resolve. He picks up the file and says, almost conversationally, "Senator Rowe." Ethan's eyes widen just slightly. He turns and sees his father already rising from the second row, face pale. "Please step forward," Caprio says. The courtroom feels like it's holding its breath, because in that moment, everyone knows the senator's name won't save his son today. It's about to do the opposite. Senator Daniel Rowe's footsteps echo as he makes his way to the bench. It's a short distance, maybe 15 feet, but it feels like a public walk of reckoning. He straightens his cuffs out of habit, but there's no podium to hide behind here. No staffer whispering rebuttals, no cameras to spin this. Just a father and a judge who isn't here to be impressed. "Your Honor," the senator says, with a stiff nod, voice tight. "I wasn't expecting to be called." Caprio gestures calmly to the space beside his bench. "Senator Rowe, your son has made it very clear to this courtroom, to Officer Santos, and to me, that he believes your position entitles him to behave as he pleases." The senator glances at Ethan, who now sits frozen, the cockiness from moments ago leaking out of his posture. "I'd like you to clarify something for the record, Dad," Caprio continues. "Is that an accurate understanding? Does your title extend a shield to your son in the eyes of the law?" There's a pause. The senator looks at his son again, then back to the judge. "I've tried to teach him better," he says quietly. Caprio doesn't flinch. "You've tried," he echoes. "Today, Senator, you will succeed." That line lands like a pin drop in a hushed auditorium. Ethan sits up straighter now, his eyes darting between his father and the bench, like he's realizing the performance he expected is turning into something entirely different. Caprio leans forward, resting his elbows gently on the bench, not as a show of dominance, but of presence. Public service, Caprio says, Dick, is not a crown. It's not a license to ignore the rules that protect the people who elected you. The senator nods slowly, his eyes steady but glassy. My father, Caprio says, was a fruit peddler. He never made it past 3rd grade. But I promise you, if I ever spoke to a woman the way your son spoke to Officer Santos, my father would have had me sweeping the sidewalk until my shoes wore out. There's a murmur of quiet agreement from the public benches. Ethan shrinks slightly in his chair. Caprio's voice drops, softer now, not as judge to defendant, but man to man. I believe in second chances, but not without ownership, not without truth. He turns toward the senator again. So I ask you plainly, Senator Rowe, will you support this court in issuing consequences your son has clearly never faced? The moment stretches. Ethan's mouth opens, but nothing comes out. The senator swallows hard, and then, without blinking, yes, Your Honor. The courtroom feels the shift, not political, parental, and that's when the tide turns. The words still linger in the air like smoke. Yes, Your Honor. The courtroom doesn't breathe. Even Judge Caprio waits. Not out of doubt, but because he knows what's coming next matters more than any headline the senator's ever chased. Caprio sits back gently. Just to be clear, Senator, he says, you understand the implications of supporting consequences for your son in this courtroom. On the record. Senator Rowe nods once. I do. He doesn't look at Ethan. He looks at Caprio. Daniel, Ethan blurts suddenly, eyes wide. What the hell are you doing? It's the first time he's used his father's first name, and everyone hears it. The senator finally turns to his son. His voice is quieter now, but clear. You crossed a line, Ethan. You embarrassed yourself, our family and me, and I let you. I thought maybe it would pass. He shakes his head slowly, almost to himself. But this is different. You humiliated a woman doing her job. You sat here mocking a judge. You think being my son gives you a free pass? Ethan looks panicked. It's not just his father's words, it's the unfamiliar tone behind them. There's no anger, no volume, just calm resolve. You can't just agree with him, Ethan mutters, looking around like he's hoping someone will come to his defense. You're a senator. Just say something smart. Get me out of this. Caprio raises a single hand. Not to scold, but to reclaim the room. That's enough, Mr. Rowe. Ethan flinches, not because of the volume. There isn't any. It's the weight behind it. The courtroom watches the mask fall. The boy who swaggered in with gum and attitude now looks like what he is. A teenager in over his head. Caprio turns back to the senator. Thank you, he says simply. Senator Rowe nods again, slower this time, as if the moment has finally landed. Caprio lets the silence hang just long enough before he shifts forward. He glances briefly at Officer Santos, who hasn't moved, then at Ethan, whose hands now rest nervously on the table, and then he begins. Let's talk about what happens next. Judge Caprio folded his hands gently, elbows resting on the bench. His gaze shifted toward Ethan, not harsh, not indulgent, but piercing. The kind of gaze that doesn't yell, doesn't lecture, just sees through everything. Mr. Rowe, he said, his voice even, I want you to look at me. Ethan hesitated, then reluctantly met his eyes. You bullied a woman who was simply doing her job, Caprio began. In broad daylight, with witnesses. You disrupted traffic, endangered others, and damaged city equipment. You insulted your father in front of the very system he swore to uphold. He paused. No response from Ethan. And throughout all of this, you acted as though you were immune, above consequence, above responsibility. Ethan muttered. I didn't mean. Caprio raised one finger. Let me finish. Ethan shut his mouth. Caprio continued. You see, what concerns me more than your actions is your attitude. You walked into this courtroom expecting a show, a scolding at worst. You smirked, you interrupted, you played games on your phone while a public servant described how you humiliated her in the street. Ethan's posture shrunk slightly. Caprio leaned in just a hair, his voice still soft. You treated this court like a joke, treated the law like a game, treated your father's title like a shield. I was upset, Ethan tried, fumbling. I didn't mean all that stuff. No, Caprio said plainly. You meant every word. And now that you've seen the consequences beginning to form around you, only now do you regret it. There was no drama in his tone, no grandstanding, just truth. I've had gang members sit in that chair, Caprio said. Addicts, the homeless, veterans with nowhere to go. And many of them, most of them, show more humility in 5 minutes than you have in the last hour. Ethan swallowed hard. Caprio looked at him long and steady. But you're young, he finally said. You have time. What you don't have, at least not anymore, is the illusion that your last name excuses bad behavior. He turned to the senator again, then back to Ethan. And since you've grown used to skipping accountability, we're going to make sure you feel it. Not with punishment, but with purpose. Ethan blinked. Caprio leaned back. Because what you really need is to learn how to stand in someone else's shoes. The room was still. Ethan didn't speak. For once, he was listening. And Caprio was just getting started. Judge Caprio leaned slightly forward, resting his hands on the bench. His voice dropped to a measured cadence, low and unhurried, as though every word carried weight, and he expected it to land. This court isn't here to humiliate you, Mr. Rowe, he said calmly. It's here to help you understand who you're becoming and who you still have the choice to be. He paused, letting the silence gather. Here's what will happen. Ethan shifted uncomfortably. Everyone in the courtroom leaned in. First, Caprio began, you will pay full restitution for the damaged ticket printer. That includes the labor and cost of replacement. Ethan muttered under his breath. Caprio continued unfazed. Second, you will issue a handwritten apology to Officer Santos. Not typed, not emailed, written, with sincerity, and I'll be reading it before she does. Officer Santos blinked, surprised. Third, you will attend the Providence Youth Traffic Safety Program for reckless cycling every Saturday for the next 4 weeks. Ethan opened his mouth, but Caprio raised a hand. The boy quickly closed it again. Fourth, Caprio said, his tone sharpening just slightly, you will complete 60 hours of community service. Gasps and murmurs rose. Caprio clarified. Specifically, assisting senior citizens at designated intersections near grocery stores and pharmacies. You will help them cross safely, carry their bags, and, I hope, learn to be helpful, not harmful, to the community you once mocked. Ethan's face twisted in disbelief. And your bicycle, Caprio added, will be confiscated for 90 days. You may have it back when you've demonstrated a pattern of respect, not before. The courtroom was silent. Ethan let out a frustrated sigh. That's so unfair. Judge Caprio's voice didn't rise. It dipped. You threw a $600 piece of city equipment into a puddle, threatened a public officer, and disrupted traffic downtown. I'd say you got off light. Then, just as the courtroom seemed to settle, Caprio spoke again. And finally, he said, Senator Rowe. The senator looked up, visibly bracing. You will join your son for 10 of those 60 hours. Not in the office, not in the comfort of a press-friendly volunteer drive, on the street, assisting seniors standing beside him. Ethan's jaw dropped. What? That's not even, he didn't do anything. Caprio replied gently. And that's the point. He didn't. The judge looked directly at the senator. You said earlier you've tried to teach him better. Well, lessons are best taught side by side. The senator exhaled slowly. Yes, Your Honor, I'll do it. Caprio nodded once. Good. Then perhaps these hours will serve two purposes, correcting one path and reinforcing another. He struck his gavel once, not harshly, but with finality. Sentence rendered. We'll reconvene in 90 days for follow-up. Docket adjourned. As the murmurs began again, Ethan sat there, stunned. Not angry anymore, just still. For the first time all day, he didn't have a comeback, because the consequences weren't loud. They were real. The first morning of community service, Ethan Rowe showed up 15 minutes late. He wore the same hoodie from court, hood pulled low, and a look on his face that dared someone to tell him what to do. His sneakers dragged on the pavement. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He didn't silence it. Waiting at the corner of Elm and Washington, under a rusted city sign that read Senior Safety Crossing Zone, was a wiry old man named Mr. Pierce, 82. With 2 tennis balls strapped to his walker and the sharp eyes of someone who'd lived long enough to know a brat when he saw one. "You're late," Mr. Pierce said flatly. Ethan shrugged. "You're early." "Boy," Mr. Pierce muttered, "you're gonna have a long month." The first day was a disaster. Ethan leaned on the signpost, tapped through videos on his phone, and barely spoke. He gave one-word answers when seniors asked for help. He didn't make eye contact. When an old woman dropped her reusable bag and apples rolled into the street, he sighed audibly before picking them up. "I'm not a dog walker," Ethan muttered to no one, but the seniors noticed, especially Mrs. Carline. 76, sharp as a whip, with a cane that clicked like a metronome. At the end of the second day, she stared him down. "You think we can't see you rolling your eyes?" she asked. "We raise kids tougher than you, so quit pouting and be useful." Ethan blinked, stunned. Nobody had spoken to him like that before, not without a security clearance. On day 4, something shifted. Ethan showed up 5 minutes early. He didn't say much, but he stood straighter. He offered to carry Mr. Pierce's folding chair. He didn't roll his eyes when a man asked for help across the street, just stepped forward and offered an arm. The big change came the next week. A blind man named Mr. Hargrove arrived, unsure where the intersection began. Ethan tapped him gently on the elbow. "You're okay. I got you." They crossed slowly. Cars stopped. Ethan walked with care. When they reached the other side, Mr. Hargrove smiled and patted his shoulder. "You walk like someone who knows where he's going." Ethan didn't reply, but something flickered in his face. Not pride, exactly. Something quieter. After that, he stopped checking his phone. He asked people's names. He brought a bottle of water for Mrs. Carline. He began showing up early every weekend. Not because someone made him, because he'd started to realize respect wasn't something you demanded. It was something you earned. 3 months later, the courtroom felt different. The bench was the same. The seal behind Judge Caprio still gleamed with the weight of its meaning. But as the doors opened and Ethan Rowe stepped inside, he no longer looked like the boy who had once chewed gum in front of an officer, slouched defiantly in his chair, or mocked the system like it was beneath him. He wore a clean, button-down shirt. His hair was combed. He walked with his hands by his sides, not shoved in his pockets. There was no smirk on his face, just a quiet stillness. And when he reached the front, he didn't need to be told. He stood straight, looked Judge Caprio in the eye, and spoke without being asked. "Good morning, Your Honor." Caprio nodded gently. "Good morning, Mr. Rowe. You've completed your sentence?" Ethan nodded. "Yes, sir, 60 hours, and restitution for the printer. I also gave Officer Santos a written apology." Caprio looked down at the report in front of him, then back up. "I see that you fulfilled every part of your sentence. On time. Without complaint." A faint smile tugged at the corners of Ethan's mouth. "I complained a little at the start." Caprio chuckled softly. "Honesty is progress." Officer Santos was present again, seated to the side. Caprio turned to her. "Officer, have you received the apology?" She stood, met Ethan's eyes, and gave a simple nod. "I did, and I believe it was real." Caprio turned back to Ethan. "You want to say anything?" Ethan hesitated, then stepped a little closer. "I didn't realize how much harm I caused. I thought it was just words, just an object. But when I started working with seniors, I saw how much people rely on the little things. their safety, their dignity, their jobs. I get it now. And I'm sorry. The courtroom was silent. No dramatic music, no gasps, just a real moment. A young boy realizing the ripple effect of his actions. Caprio leaned back, hands folded. Mr. Rowe, responsibility is not punishment. It's growth. And growth begins the moment you stop blaming everyone else. He paused. Case dismissed. Ethan exhaled slowly. The senator, watching from the second row, gave the faintest nod, one not of pride, but of relief. As Ethan turned to leave, he looked back at Officer Santos. "I really am sorry," he said again. She nodded, and in that quiet courtroom, beneath the seal of justice, a small but powerful truth had taken root. Some lessons don't need to be shouted. They just need to be lived. Should the senator have stepped in sooner? Was Judge Caprio right to include the father in the sentence? And do you think the punishment was fair for a 14-year-old? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. If you believe respect isn't automatic, it's taught, then make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on that bell icon so you don't miss tomorrow's case. Got gone. And hey, if you've ever seen someone act entitled just because of their last name, share the story with them. Watch the videos appearing on your screen right now, and I'll see you tomorrow at the same time with a brand new courtroom story that'll hit just as hard. This script is not verified and may or may not be true.